welcome back to another video. This week I'm going to be doing a little bit of an instructional video. I know I don't do these too often, so I thought I would just not that I'm the expert or anything, I thought I would just enjoy showing people sort of just how I view anatomy and learning how to draw anatomy and stuff like that. So I'm just getting some materials ready in my pencil case and in my sketchbook. But yeah, just starting off with a blank page. I guess like the typical sort of place to start anatomy is with like the stick figure. I actually haven't drawn a stick figure in so long. So stick figures, you know, is sort of, you know, standard. Everyone's kind of drawing them a lot, and the way that I would like kind of view turning a stick figure into something a little bit more substantial is to add a couple like extra joints. So you would have the head, and you have a neck, and then you have shoulders, and then you have the line to represent your torso, but then you have like a pelvis bone, and then you would have like legs, knees, and I'm off the paper, but like thighs, knees, and then upper arms, forearms, and if you kind of do this, like I'm going to just really quickly just turn this into like a little bit more of a filled out kind of thing, which hopefully would show you that like even if you want to start off based on a stick figure, you can make it kind of work. So again, this doesn't really like look properly like a person, but like starting off from here and getting to here is, I think, like a little bit more of a step up that is a little bit more digestible. But this is really the way that I would approach drawing a figure. And I do know that, like, you know, those wooden mannequins, I might put a picture on the screen of that, those wooden mannequins, I wouldn't really suggest working based off of those either. What I do recommend is trying to learn anatomy based on poses and then try to take note of like proportions. So I'm just gonna sketch out, like I'm gonna go to my bank of Pinterest poses right now, and I'm gonna sketch out just a pose and time lapse it and then talk a little bit about it, just to let you know like what my mindset is when approaching this pose, and then I'm gonna do another one that's like real time. Alright, so this pose I got from this picture on Pinterest, and it's not perfect. The first thing that you would see me do is start off with the head, and then I kind of just drew like the strongest line that I thought. So for me in this photo, the strongest line was the line of like her back towards her bum, down her leg, and back up the shoe. So this line down here was the first line that I noticed that I felt was important for this pose. So I decided to follow that and then kind of go filling in. Another thing I was noticing that I kind of added was this little white space, because I noticed that this knee was going out that way while this other knee was coming up this way, like towards us. So, and then another couple things, just the lines that I kind of find that are important is, I think like adding a line towards the hips is kind of important, a little line under like the bust. Even on men, this would be like under the pectorals, and then a center line kind of helps. And another thing, especially when drawing like shoes, I find that drawing like the lip of the shoe kind of helps you position yourself. But like this might be a lot to handle, just like grab a picture and copy it. It might seem like really confusing and overwhelming, especially when you have like all these clothes and hair and all that kind of stuff to take in. So next thing I want to do is kind of give you an idea of the kind of proportions, like this compared to that kind of thing that I think of when drawing anatomy. So for that, I'm just going to draw just a regular old standing pose, and I'll give you an idea of like what kind of things, because there's the standard of like a body is 8 heads tall, but I don't think that's the most helpful, because I'm not like drawing a line for like here's 1 head, here's 2 heads, here's 3 heads. Like I'm not really doing that when I'm drawing. So I always like to start with the head, and so from the head comes the neck, and then after that I kind of like drawing the collarbones. I think that the collarbones are a really good way to get a sense of the entire torso, whether it's male or female, and which I just drew female, so I'm going to end up drawing male here. So from the torso I like to connect it, draw some shoulders, and then I like to go for like the pectorals, or if it's a woman I would go like for the breast. Like it's really roughly sketched, so don't try to like worry too much about it. But again, this is all generalizing for when you're just starting out. Obviously you can draw like mythical creatures or people of different sizes and weights and all that kinds of things, but just if you're trying to get a handle on basic anatomy, you should start with things that are a little bit more standard that you can repeat, and then use that to build off of later. So I draw like a straight down, because this is facing a little bit that way. So straight down on one side and the other side, so the spine would go around here, and because it's tilted that way, this looks straight and this has an arch to it. So then it goes down, And around here as well, I would probably draw this one center line going here, and then the center line going through, this would be through the nipples, like under the pectorals, like I was saying, is here. Another good one is if you want to sketch out like the silhouette of the rib cage. So here the rib cage would go like this, and then up, and then you get to see it poke up from behind a little bit, and it goes around, like so. But if that's too confusing, then you really shouldn't bother with it. It's like just in the middle, like it's lower than you would think it would be, because the collarbones connect here. I'm not like an expert on like the technical sides of anatomy, but I did notice that the ribcage would be lower than you think it would be, because the shoulder joints sit on top of it. So for the shoulders, what I like to do is I like to imagine them as like a little like semicircle. So like there's this line here, and then it goes around almost like a sphere, but it gets cut off. So this here is where the armpit usually goes, and when it's like facing away from you, you get a more rounded shape. Here is fairly straight almost the way it cuts up, but here it goes rounder and goes more spherical. And another, like, what I find is really useful is learning the way the muscles interconnect really help you just kind of plan things out, because all these lines that I've added through here you wouldn't see at all if I were to put clothes on this figure, but the fact that I've drawn them in while I'm sketching is kind of a nice confidence boost to make sure that, oh yeah, this is right. So typically in this stage I would do the arms. So I know that there's like the little divot here from on women or people who are more they're a little bit more overweight. This little divot is less pronounced, but for more muscular people this is like a lot more extreme. And then here would be like the bicep, back here is like the tricep, and then here goes the elbow, and this comes in. So there's this muscle that goes this here and it wraps around. I don't know what any of them are called, but your forearm has like this kind of shape that comes out here, and then in bit for the elbow, so that goes there, that goes here, and then just like a shape for a hand. So another good one that I like to draw is again also on women, is like the belly button and that little V. I like to draw that when I'm drawing torsos, just again to get my spacing sort of right. And then here would be if you have like just jeans, I would usually put the jeans around here. The other arm gets to be partially hidden, and if I want to do like a cool pose, I can make it so like it's like bent a little bit back further instead of having this divot go straight and then it goes wrapped around. So here's his hand, and the hand here would go like, I'm not trying to go too much in detail because I'd like to draw a couple more examples here. So to recap where we've been so far, started with the head, added the neck, then did the collarbone, which is like a V, and then I started adding the torso, then goes the shoulders, then I took this a little bit lower, added the arms. And for the legs, I usually take this center line that I did in the beginning of the torso and kind of draw a little divot when it's a man. When it's a woman, I go more rounded, but with a man, I keep it like a little straight line just because crotches look sort of different between men and women if you weren't aware. So I draw a straight line, and then I just go down, and then around here goes the knee. So here's where I kind of change shape. So if you want to just like close off this shape here and then close it, oh no. So I drew the line, but see I went further back because again this is turned in space. So the line would still sort of show because that's the way trousers are made, and you can also do like a wrinkle or whatever. I'm trying to keep this. This is safe for work, everyone. There's trousers on them. So this is where the knees would go, and the way you can draw this just like with a circle would just close the shape, and then after that go the calves. And again I've drawn it too far down, so I'm not going to be able to draw the feet in this one, but I tend to go like out and then back in, and then out and then back in, but they're not out in the same place. The out on the inside I draw lower than the out on the outside because that's also the way that muscles work, and then it goes thinner, and then I would have drawn the shoe. And again, because this one's also turned to go more this way, this is going to go like in and straight, and then over here it's going to go just out because of the way it gets turned in space. And the way I realized, like I learned all these little things is through studying references at different angles, and then also there's these like 3D models of how to do workout exercises that they show the muscle groups very clearly, and I'll try to, because I'm going to later on sketch out a couple of them, I'm going to show my reference on screen at the same time as I'm drawing them. But with this reference right here, a couple, like they say again, the size of the head should equal like between 7 and 8 bodies, but again I wasn't really following that. So if we get like this is a head, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, okay, this time it ended up 8. A lot of the times mine end up 6 or 7 because I tend to draw heads bigger, but that one I don't really find as important of a guideline for having good proportions. The one that I always usually do is this line where you would put your trousers. So between your trouser line and the top of the head should be about the same size as between the trouser line and where you do your feet. That's the one I tend to prefer, so from here to here and then here to here, they should be equal. That's the one that I tend to prefer rather than the head measurements. And then of course there's the one where, you know, elbows are typically where the ribcage and hands end up mid-thigh. Your upper arm and your lower arm tend to be similar sizes. What's another one? Your torso can be the size of 2 heads sideways. Another one is, I don't know what another one, but there's a bunch of those like kind of for reference, but it's really just standard and I don't find them that helpful. I find the best ones are like, you know, hands somewhere in the vicinity of the mid-thigh for them to end, and elbows in between the shoulder and the hand. That's like, and then yeah, the one where your where you would have your jeans sit would be halfway between the head and the feet. That's the one that I enjoy. So moving on, I'm gonna pull up on my computer just one of those like bodybuilder references, and the way that I did learn anatomy was through a lot of gesture drawings, which is where you get a reference and you really quickly try to put down what you see, sort of similar to what I did just now on the previous page. This I would consider a gesture drawing, even though this one spent a little bit longer than I normally would, and I drew a lot larger than I normally would for a gesture drawing. Yeah, so you do a lot of those really small, like an inch tall on your paper. So there's a lot of websites that you could use. There's Line of Action, there's just figure drawing, there's stuff like that. Most of the models are also nude in those websites, so if you're sensitive to that, obviously skip it, but if not, like, it's a really good way to just learn to begin with. If not, like a one that I really enjoy doing and I've talked about in a video in the past is just look up like football player or basketball player, and it just on Google, and then you'll have action shots of these athletes that are in prime physical condition doing athletical motions, so they're good references for like action pose and the way that things look as you turn them around in space. Well, if you Google muscle reference, you're going to find a lot of like 3D models or like kind of X-ray type visions of just muscles. And obviously I started out doing bit by bit, like first I did legs, then I did the back, then I did arms. So if you look up back muscle reference sort of thing, that you're going to get like really weird complicated drawings, and you don't really have to understand them and learn the names, but I would suggest just trying to mimic them, because the fact that you were drawing it with all the lines in between help you just understand how it works, how things connect, and it really doesn't take too long to copy one or another. So the one I'm going to draw is one from the back, and I'm going to try to draw it so that it fits on the page. I really don't get the proportions right. So you know what, I'm just gonna start over, turn the page. Maybe this time, but that's a lot of what it takes to learn anatomy. You have to just do a lot of repetition. You're not gonna learn it overnight, and just by copying one reference doesn't make you an expert. Just keep at it. Alright, well this might look like a scribbly mess. When I'm looking at the reference and I'm looking at this, it makes sense. And it's not going to make sense unless you are imitating it. And through this, again, these proportions are awful. This is like way too bulky, way too stumpy sort of thing to compare to something that I would normally have to draw. But it's helped me gain an understanding of how this could look like when exaggerated, so then I can apply it just from memory instinctively, in a sense, to when I'm just trying to draw something normally. And then I've shown you kind of to recap again, I've shown you like starting point, like what you can do for a stick figure to turn it into something sort of like a figure. I've shown you kind of the way I approach copying a reference, like trying to start with the head, then finding the biggest line within the reference and imitating it just by looking at it quickly. I've sketched out just a regular figure by memory and shown you my kind of benchmarks for counting, like kind of comparing proportions and stuff like that. And even in this one, now that we've done this one and we turn back to this one, you can see how I added this line over here, how I added like these lines over here, how I added like this kind of connection in the bicep over here, and like the way that the knee works. Like even though I know that there's like muscles that go around here like that or whatever, I don't really have to add them, but I did add a couple of them that I found have been useful for me to add across time. So we did that. We had a failed attempt at copying this muscle figure, which happens a lot, and there's no shame in having to start over, and trust me, it's so much easier to just flip the page instead of wasting a lot of time just trying to erase and perfect this. Seriously, if it's not working, start over a new page. There's nothing that you're going to lose by just, if anything, you're going to gain stuff. You're going to take everything you learned from this one and reapply it to something new and it'll turn out better. Not that I would consider this better. And then the last thing that I'm going to just show you real quick is I'm just going to do some smaller, fast gestures, and I'm going to do that by looking up soccer player. It's not perfect, but that's not the point. The point is to get more of a feel for it, and if you do enough of this and a little bit of this, then anatomy would become a lot easier. And yeah, the point of it is just to keep at it, don't give up. And obviously doing like what I do, 7 pages worth of this in a day is like, you don't have to do 7 pages worth of this in a single day. But if you just do a single page of this on a day that you're drawing, just to like warm up or something, do like just 2 little gestures and then go on your merry way, then that will serve you brilliantly. And like within a month you wouldn't be able to recognize the kind of figures that you can draw, how easy it is to draw what's in your mind for a figure now compared to what it used to be before. This is the kind of thing that builds up over time. Do it a little bit every time you're sitting down to draw, and you'll find yourself a lot more comfortable with anatomy before you know it. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Do let me know if you want a video sort of similar to this on like my philosophy, the way that I've learned how to draw, the way I draw hands, or anything else that I draw. I really hope this was helpful, and I'll see you all next week.